One of India's most respected, trusted and loved leaders has passed. We are discussing the lifetimes and legacy of the legendary Ratan Tata. Well, what you have heard through the course of the day today from business leaders, from politicians, not just from here in India, but leaders from across the world, is the immense contribution that Ratan Tata made in taking India global, as well as in fulfilling the many ambitions and aspirations that Indian business had. Perhaps one of his most significant contributions in the last few years has been his contribution as an investor to India's startup ecosystem. Joining us today to talk about the impact that Ratan Tata made, not just with his wisdom and his counsel, but also his capital to India's startup ecosystem, are Neha Singh, the co-founder of Tracxn, also with us Swati Bhargava, the co-founder of Cashkaro, Anuradha Acharya, the founder and CEO at Mapmygenome, Shradha Sharma, the founder and CEO at YourStory, and Rahul Garg, the founder and CEO at Moglix. Ladies and Rahul, many thanks for joining us. It's not a coincidence that you see 4 women on this panel, and that is because Mr. Tata consciously was trying to also support women-led businesses and women entrepreneurs. We have a dearth of women entrepreneurs in this country, and that was a very conscious decision on the part of Ratan Tata to invest in businesses that were being driven by women. Anu, let me come to you first and start by asking you about your first meeting with Mr. Tata, as well as how you got him to come on board at Mapmygenome and the big lessons that you take away from his legacy and your time with him.
Thanks, Shireen. I think it was back in 2016, and I was introduced to his team at that point to go and meet them. So I went there in 2016. I had sent across my presentation, and when I went there, they said, I said, can I meet Mr. Tata? And they said, well, he's just come back from the US and it'll take 3 hours if you really want to meet him. I said, not a problem. I'm going to wait here. I won't go anywhere. I'll sit here till he comes out. So I waited for 3 hours. When I came out and met him, he said, the first thing he said was, I have read your entire deck, and what you're doing is very important for India, and we need to do these kind of things. And this is back in 2016, when many investors at that point of time did not understand the value of genomics. So I think that really put me on cloud 9. But he was also very detailed. He asked some really technical questions that I often do not hear other investors asking. And then I asked him very nicely, I said, you really believe in what we are doing. Would you like to come on this journey with us? And I think I'd already decided, but he said, okay, let's see. And he smiled. And I think that particular meeting for me was my first meeting with him. And I was so impressed with what I had just heard from somebody who was like one of the tallest industrialists, but was so humble and so sweet, but also had that tiny bit of mischievous smile on his face. I think that really made me believe in what we were doing. And I think I also got an opportunity to meet him again as well. But that was my very first meeting. And it really taught me that at the end, I think if you can do something for India, and you can create something, I think there is value, and there are people who will recognize that. And Mr. Tata was probably the biggest and the most humble person that I came across who recognized the value of what we were doing. So I think, humility.
Well, absolutely, as you rightly pointed out, humility, kindness, but also, the obsession with detail, as you pointed out. He asked you questions that many investors were not asking you, but also the belief in where India should be in the future and backing ideas like genomics, where other people perhaps at that point in time were not willing to look at that as an opportunity. Swati, let me come to you. Again, the conscious decision to back women-led businesses, women entrepreneurs in a country that often shies away from funding women-led organizations. Your first engagement with Mr. Tata, and more importantly, what do you take away from the way that he lived his life, as well as the ability to straddle so many different spheres? I mean, we're talking about genomics, we're talking about payments, we're talking about a media business. infrastructure, platforms, his ability to traverse and navigate so many different areas. Swati, your thoughts?
Right. Thanks, Shireen. Indeed, a very sad day for all of us because he's somebody who we've had the honor of having on our cap table. I always used to tell my husband, Rohan, that, we've just got so lucky that we've had the fortune of having him as a shareholder. And I don't know how many times and how many more businesses we'll do that we will get him in that role. So I'm glad we had this opportunity. We met him in 2016. We requested Vani to set up a meeting. So I remember going to the Taj in Mumbai, and there were 3 or 4 startups he was meeting that day. Everyone had a 20-25 minute slot. They weren't woman-led at that time. Most of I think we were the only one. Me and Rohan both run the business together. And I remember entering the meeting room, and Mr. Tata was sitting on this long table having his lunch. He was having dessert, and the plate had very nice, different sweets in it. And I remember thinking that, wow, he enjoys his dessert, and he's, striking that balance between healthy living, but at the same time spoiling him when he can. And, touching on a little bit of the softer side, I told him the first thing that, I'm really excited to be here because my 85-year-old grandfather's first job was in Tata Steel. So he's very, very proud that I'm meeting you today. And he said, please thank him for his efforts. Tell him we're really grateful, and please convey my regards to him. And it was very sweet and kind of him to say that. It could have also been like, hey, running out of time, but he wasn't like that, although we stuck to our 25-minute slot. Second thing I asked him was that, sir, do you mind that instead of standing on the side and pitching, with the deck away from him, can we just sit across from you and have a conversation? And he said, yeah, sure. And he was so approachable. I didn't feel like I'm talking to somebody who's running this $165 billion business. He was so humble. And during the conversation, 15 minutes, he asked us everything about how Cashguru works, how do we acquire customers, why do partners work with us, what is affiliate marketing like internationally? And he was fully aware of all that. One would think that, hey, if you've run a brick and mortar business always, and, you are in your 70s, would you know about performance marketing as much? Would you be interested in that? But he was curious. He was, his business acumen was shining through because he was just so engaged. And it wasn't a conversation where you keep quiet and, he keeps quiet and it's just like, nod. No, he was engaged. And in the end, I asked him, sir, what do you think of our business? And he said, in a country that loves to save, you're giving free money. What's there not to love? He was just like, wow, like such a good idea. And that's exactly how we worked out the product market fit in our mind all these years. So that was like a, big validation for us. And then after that, he remembered that, okay, let's take a photo for your grandfather, right? And we were smiling because we didn't have to ask him, sir, can we do this? He was so giving. And 2 weeks later, we learned that they are investing, and it was smooth. Like, he's and at that time, I remember when we did the PR that he's investing. The amount of credibility and the amount of support we got from others, because his name does mean today and will always mean so much. So I think his stamp of approval is like, the biggest you could get in corporate India. And to answer your
absolutely, if you have Ratan Tata on your cap table, it'll open up many, many more doors. Swati, I'll come back to you in just a second, but let me come to Shradha as well. Shradha, not just as an investor, you've also had the opportunity of speaking with Mr. Tata, as I have, over the course of the years. And, what has always struck me, as Swati and Anuradha were both pointing out, is that curiosity and the ability and the willingness to want to learn about things that he knew something about, but more importantly, things he knew nothing about. I want to understand from you, what was your first impression of meeting Ratan Tata?
Shireen, good to talk to you, and very sad today actually. I've not slept because somewhere, it's deeply impacted, I'm sure, to many of us. My first meeting of him is like, very grandfatherly, very loving, very nice, like, like of course I was starstruck, and I don't want to not say that when I met him first. And I also want to say that, when we meet people and when we meet them many times, and I had the opportunity to meet him many times and go to his house and all that, then sometimes that charm or that, idol worship diminishes. But with him, the more I met, the more I liked him. My first meeting, I'll just very quickly say, it was very funny because I didn't get to present or anything, but very quickly, I said, sir, you should invest in this, in YourStory. And he said, media, what do you do? And blah, blah. And then he said, media and I don't get along. So I said, you and I will get along. And then he laughed and yes, he invested. And that the fund that he had set up, the UC Berkeley R&D fund, that also invested in the company. So yeah, so the first impression was of a man who looked at you equally, who treated you equally, who was present, who was kind. And over the years, the more I got to know him, I realized that what a man he was. And I've written about it, but one thing that I would like through your channel, everyone to know, very small thing, that he had a very bad knee pain, and I'd gone for a video interview, and I was just, after the conversation, I was getting up and going out. And I knew he was in pain, but he got up to see me off to the door. And I said, why, Mr. Tata, are you doing this? I can go. And he said that, a woman comes to my house, and I'm brought up like that. Like, I cannot not go and see you off to the door. And, to me, those very simple, small things, which he did all the time, are things that one remembers him for. And last, I would say, one story, which I think it was off the record, and this was not that off the record, but I had asked him, Mr. Tata, do you feel lonely? And this was later, just very recently, when I had gone to his house, that, loneliness, we all go through it and all that. And he said, yes, I do. And the question and I said, the way he thinks about it, that today I pick up the call and ask someone to have dinner or lunch with me, and I'll say, hey, hello, this is Ratan, will you have lunch or dinner? Then he said, more often than not, most people will come, leave everything and have that dinner with me. But the question is, are they going to have dinner with Ratan, or are they going to have dinner with Mr. Tata? And I thought that, that was so poignant, and that was the man, lonely, but at the same time, everyone's, and present and loving and kind to everyone. I'm such a loss today. I'm just feeling very sad.
No, I can completely understand how you feel, and that's how many of us feel today. It is in many ways a deeply personal loss as well for many who have been observing. Some have had the opportunity of working and engaging with him, but many who've just been observers of his story and, observers of his legacy as well. And you're right in pointing out that it is very often the small acts of kindness that leave the biggest impact. Neha, coming to you at Tracxn and, your own engagement with Mr. Tata, getting him on board your cap table, but more importantly, the biggest lesson that you take away from him as an entrepreneur and for entrepreneurship.
So he's been a childhood legend for a lot of us while growing up. We had the opportunity of meeting him a couple of times. The first time was, when I was graduating from IIT Bombay. But my most memorable meeting would be in the early stages of Tracxn. We had a meeting set up. This was in Mumbai. And the meeting was supposed to be for 1 hour, and it actually went on for an hour and a half. And, in this meeting, he had a lot of, interesting, tough questions for us, for the business, how we're doing it, how do we see it, what's the vision, etc. And, as soon as we left the meeting, within about 15 minutes, we got a call from his office that he wanted to invest. And obviously, we were thrilled about it. And, I think apart from the humility, which is very inspiring when on the times that you meet him, a couple of the things which probably stuck with us which was very different. So one was that he was so hands-on. So when the initial meeting was set up, by his office, we had thought that there would be in the meeting, there would be other people who would be probably doing most of the questions, and then he might be just listening in. But it was nothing like that. It was him actually asking all the questions, taking us through, asking us really tough questions. And he was the person who was actually taking the call finally. So that was very inspiring that, despite having seen having known him as a business visionary, how hands-on he is about understanding businesses like us. And I think the second thing that I would probably, that stuck with me ever since is the curiosity, right? Like, he has seen businesses of amazing scale, and he met us in the initial years. This was, 5 years before we actually got listed. And for him to be able to understand and ask questions and be curious about what we are doing, I think that was very humbling for us. And he was very excited about the startup and the innovation ecosystem, which was just starting to grow in India. And we are a platform to track startups. I think that probably resonated. But it has been such a humbling experience of having interacted with him.
In many ways, as was being pointed out, he was the bridge between the old and the new, the legacy businesses as well as the new age businesses that now are proving to be an important ingredient of India's economic success. Rahul, it's not very often that I have 4 women on a program, so apologies for coming to you at the very last. But I want to understand from you, one, of course, getting Mr. Tata to come on board as an investor. But more importantly, what did you draw upon him in terms of his counsel, in terms of his wisdom, in terms of his ideas on how you would like to build Moglix?
No, firstly, I think I would say it is an extremely sad day for the world, not just for India. As I speak, I'm actually at the Tata building at Harvard in Boston. So think about, his impact is not just in India, but across the world. So world has really lost a leader who stands way taller than his life. And I think, there are no words to describe the impact he has had on people whom he has met personally, but also on people who have never met him. Because I think I was inspired by him even before I met him. When I started Moglix, and I said, I want to change the manufacturing ecosystem. I want to figure out how does technology change the supply chain in the country? How does India become the epicenter of manufacturing? And more than any investor, I said, if one person who would trust us that we are on the right path and can guide us, it was him. So when we got him, a meeting with him in 2015, and we were almost like early launch. So we were just trying to figure out how will this ecosystem change. GST had not happened. We got a meeting with him 45 minutes, and we said, it does not matter. His investment does not matter. We just believe that there is no other proxy in the country and maybe for the world who can speak manufacturing and startups in one single line. And just meeting him, I didn't expect him to, by the way, just like many others, him to be curious, asking questions, asking how will you solve the quality problems that may come from your suppliers? How will you solve for delivery? Do you think India manufacturing will continue to grow? Can we really become larger and larger? Do you have global ambitions? It is just phenomenal how much sort of in the moment he was, if you met him in person. And unlike many other people that you meet who kind of give you a vibe that they know it all, he was curious. He was like, maybe you know more stuff and I want to learn. I want to contribute. I want to ask you the right questions. And then maybe that will help you build a better business or become a better entrepreneur. And I think, but I also, the other feeling that I get today is also, I think as the country, we should also celebrate people like him who have lived a phenomenal life and will continue to inspire generations to come. And we should bring all those happy stories that all of us have with him and how we should have more and more leaders like him built in India. I certainly aspire to do whatever small percentage of a leader that I can become like him. So, and yeah, I think we will continue to have him guide from above in the sky as we build Moglix.
No, absolutely. And that's exactly the intention behind putting this show together, getting each one of you here to share with us not just the contribution that Ratan Tata made on your careers and your businesses, but also the impact that he's had on so many lives and so many young Indian entrepreneurs. It's a life well lived. It is a celebration of a life well lived today and the impact that he's made across different sectors and different industries. And that's exactly what we're attempting to do. I want to end with each one of you, and I'll give each one of you 10 seconds. Anu, I'll start by asking you, the attribute that you would remember Mr. Tata for the most.
I think the one thing I remember him is the fact that he thought about India first, and he also had the ability to get ideas from across the world and bring it to India, along with his humbleness and humor that he brought along with him.
Swati, India first. That's something that I've heard many people share with us as one of their favorite aspects of Mr. Tata's legacy. What would you say for you is the number one?
I would say it's also his integrity and his work ethic. I think the name Mr. Tata Mr. Ratan Tata comes with so much integrity that if he puts his stamp of approval on anything, you feel like it's legit, it's good, it's trustworthy. So I think if if we can live by the values that he shared, that would be a great tribute to him.
India first mindset and integrity. Neha.
So I would actually concur with Swati. So integrity is definitely one. And the other thing is just, how do you stay curious? Even if you've had your dream run, you've achieved so much in life, how do you stay curious, in your life? I think that was very inspiring for us.
Well, certainly a lifelong learner, started off as an architect and went on to work across different sectors and different industries, building each of them out. Rahul, for you, the single biggest impact in terms of how you would like to live your life, courtesy what you learned from Mr. Tata?
I think just passion for country. I think if we were to have a tribute to him, I think creating Viksit Bharat as the dream stands. I think over the next 20 years, I think we all should take inspiration, and I think that will be the best tribute we can give to a man like him.
Shradha, I'll give you the final say.
I was thinking, if you know him, the more you know him, extremely emotional, extremely kind, very kind-hearted, soft-hearted person, and very compassionate. Like running this kind of business, nation first, all that. But dil bacche wala, matlab khushi smile, that वो जिंदा दिली और वो बचपना और वो प्यार, मतलब that is something that the more you know, the more you experience, you just say, my God, this is possible, and that's Mr. Tata.
Well, the conscious capitalist, but also the compassionate capitalist, that sums up Ratan Tata's life and legacy. Anuradha Acharya, Shradha Sharma, Rahul Garg, Neha Singh and Swati Bhargava, an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your stories and your memories of Mr. Tata. As Rahul said, perhaps the greatest tribute to Mr. Tata will be not just to celebrate his legacy, but to ensure that we walk the talk and actually continue to have an India first mindset as we go out there and build these businesses. We will take a break here, but there's a lot more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We're back in a moment on this special broadcast.
There have been many moments which make one feel a sense of great satisfaction. There have been a few times when it's almost despair. I would like to be remembered as a person who was able to make a change, even if it were not financially the most successful. I'd like to be remembered as the person who made a difference. Not anything more, not anything less.